Hello, everybody, and welcome to Upgrades. I'm Jeremy Noell. I'm joined here with John Suarez, and we are going to talk today about the Symbiotic Swarm Commander 2020 deck and a couple of cards that we think would go good to upgrade this precon. So each of us is going to talk about 10 individual cards that we think would work really well with what the deck's already trying to do. And I know what you're thinking, like, we probably want to do things like upgrade the mana base and, try and get a little bit more of those staples in here. But for the most part, we both kind of tried to avoid that.
Yeah.
So you're not going to see, like, a lot of dual lands and, like, tri-lands. It's like upgrades to the actual mana base. We might have some, like, utility lands here and there. But for the most part, these are going to be ones that are really trying to hone in on the theme of the deck more than anything.
Well, yeah, we're looking, like you said, at 10 cards. There's a lot of cards to upgrade in the commander deck, so we can't hit all of them. But I agree with you. I think these are good cards to do exactly what this deck is trying to do.
Yep. And so we both came up with our lists independent from each other, and so there might be a little bit of overlap here and there, but for the most part, we've looked, and we're pretty diverse between our choices here. I know that John's a little bit more of a little bit more of a competitive player. He's a little bit more spiky. He likes to really get the wins in and likes to control a little bit.
You could say a lot.
A lot. I like to do the big, dumb, silly stuff. I like the battle cruiser type stuff. So you'll see a little bit of in the differences between our lists. So for the first one we're going after is today is the Obs on Deck Symbiotic Swarm. That's the video we're doing today, and the leader of this deck is Cathril Aspect Warper. Now, this is a legendary creature, Nightmare Insect, and it says, when Cathril Aspect Warper enters the battlefield, put a flying counter on any creature you control. If a creature in your graveyard has flying, repeat this process for First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Trample, and Vigilance. Then put a +1/+1 counter on Cathril for each counter put on a creature this way, which is pretty sweet.
Yes.
So it's a 3/3 normally. It can get real big real fast.
Sure can. 21 is not out of the question for this card.
Yep. And so we've seen this sort of like keyword soup theme in the past. A couple of the cards in the deck actually care about that kind of stuff. Like Audric Lunarch Marshal is definitely one of those. And what was the other? Karen Wanderer really cares about that kind of stuff. So there are going to be some cards in the deck that already have a bunch of keywords. Akroma, Angel of Wrath, Zatalpa, a couple of things like that. For me, because of the fact that this cares about cards in your graveyard having those keywords, the first card that I'm going to suggest for the upgrade is Buried Alive. Now, this is a card that has definitely seen some commander play.
For sure.
I think it's really good. It's 2 and a black, sorcery, search your library for 3 cards, put them right into your graveyard, and then shuffle your library. So,
exactly the kind of thing this deck wants to do.
Yeah, works really well, gets those cards right into your graveyards, lets your commander do its thing that it wants to do. So even if you're just going to grab your Akroma, your Zatalpa, your Vampire Nighthawk, things of that nature, you cast your commander, and then bam, you put those counters on those creatures, your commander gets huge, and you've got a lot to go with there. Yep. So I think this is a pretty easy include in this deck.
For sure.
John, why don't you go over your first
Well, like you said, I'm
here.
A little bit more competitive. I also went with a kind of reanimator style card, something to put them in your graveyard. I chose Altar of Dementia. For those of you who don't know what Altar of Dementia is, 2 mana artifact from Tempest, reprinted in commander sets. You can sacrifice a creature. Target player puts the number of cards equal to that creature's power from their library into their graveyard. So I went with kind of the self-mill theme, similar to what you're doing with Buried Alive, but on a much more aggressive scale to just try and put all of the creatures into your graveyard.
Yeah, which works really well. Like it's if your commander, you get it out there and it's got all those counters on it already, you can sack it to the altar, flip over a bunch of extra cards, and then recast your commander. Bam, you've got a bunch more options. Yeah. So that one's really sweet. Another one that I've got that will help out with cards getting into your graveyard, but also kind of card selection, is Underrealm Lich. This works really well because you get to choose which ones go in. So it's 4/3 that says if you would draw a card, instead look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put 1 into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. So you can have that choice of, hey, I need this extra land for this to cast my commander again, or this spell's really sweet, and then just put those creatures right in. Or if you really need those creatures right now, you can get that creature into your hand, put the rest into your graveyard, and then keep going from there.
Sure.
So I think that works well. Your second option, I think, is really cool, and it's one of the new cards from Ikoria.
Yeah, this card is really sweet. It's one of the most unique cards probably ever printed. So I chose the Ozolith. Like you mentioned at the beginning, this is kind of a keyword soup deck, but with Commander 2020 and with Ikoria, keywords now have counters. So the Ozolith is a 1-mana legendary artifact that says whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, so doesn't have to die, can get bounced, can go to the command zone. If it had counters on it, put those counters on the Ozolith. And then at the beginning of combat in your turn, if the Ozolith has counters on it, you can remove all the counters from the Ozolith and put it on the target creature.
Yeah. And this works really well because the commander actually gives all those creatures the counter, the flying counter, the lifelink counter, all that stuff.
And +1/+1 counters. It gets +1/+1. So when you replay it after it's been killed or exiled or bounced, whatever the scenario is, you get to replay it and put those counters back on it.
Yeah, and there's a lot that you can do with this. There's some sweet things. If even if you're trying to go with like -1, -1 counters, you can put those on there, put them on a creature that you want to be going to the graveyard to get all those extra keywords onto it. So
it's Skullbriar the artifact.
Yeah, exactly. Skullbriar is definitely a sweet card that's really going to love that artifact. For sure. So the next one that I've got is another one that is a little bit on the cheaper side and is really good for filling up your graveyard, and that's Stitcher Supplier. It's a 1/1 for 1 black. When it enters the battlefield or dies, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. So that's really aggressive. Like, just you can come down on turn 1. You can do something like what John's got, Alter Dementia. You can sack it, and this nets you 7 total cards going to your graveyard between the 2 triggers and itself. So
pretty crazy.
Just another way to get more cards into your graveyard, and it's not really an expensive card either. It's an uncommon. It's worth a couple of dollars. So your next one also cares about creatures dying.
It does. So this is the first commander set that's been tied to the official release, the actual booster pack standard legal set release. So Ikoria has a lot of goodies for these commander decks. The next card I chose was Death's Oasis. It's Abzan colored, white, black, green enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then return a creature with a lesser converted mana cost than that creature that died from your graveyard to your hand. So again, with the self-mill theme, with Altar of Dementia, getting to do that kind of just recurring a smaller creature that you can then sack to get a smaller creature and kind of just keep that chain going. Death's Oasis also has another ability that you can pay 1 and sacrifice it, and you'll gain life equal to the greatest converted mana cost among creatures you control. Not something you're going to do often, but maybe somebody's going to try and blow up your Death's Oasis. You get a little bit of value on the way out.
Yeah, and it could help out in that pinch where you've got something really big like an Akroma or something like that.
Or your commander with all those +1/+1 counters.
Or your commander. Yeah. Well, it's converted mana cost. So.
Oh, sure. That's fair.
Yeah.
So it's only you get 5 out of it, though, right?
Cathral's 5. Well, yeah. Your commander's 5. Okay. Yeah, so still pretty good. So my next one is one that I think is going to be really good for both the early ramp, and also the keywords, which is Sylvan Caryatid. This one I think a lot of players are probably familiar with. It came out in Theros. It hasn't been reprinted in a commander set yet, which is unfortunate. I think this really deserves to be reprinted in a commander set somewhere. But it has Defender and Hexproof, and taps to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. And it's a 0/3. So works really well as a blocker early on, and it gives you 2 different keywords if you really want the Defender on something. But Hexproof is definitely a big one for this commander.
I don't think Cathral will get Defender. I don't think that counter is something it can get. I don't think any of the counters can be negative counters, essentially, toward you.
Awesome.
They can only get positive
that's sweet.
counters for you.
So. Only the positive counters. But yes, it does have that Hexproof.
That's the most important one.
On a 2 mana body, which
that ramps too. Yeah, no, it's great. It's fantastic.
Yep.
So my next card is one that I believe you also selected.
I did.
Again, another card right out of Ikoria, because there's so many cards that are just going to be playing so well with these commander decks. I selected Eerie Ultimatum. It's very eerie. This card
I do like this card a lot.
is very, very good. So it is the Abzan colored Ultimatum, white, white, black, 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 green, green. Sorcery, return any number of permanents with different names from your graveyard to the battlefield. So just, depending on how you construct your deck, put your graveyard into the battlefield. That's not a land, I guess. You can't get multiple forests or multiple swamps, but otherwise, everything's game.
Yeah. Did somebody blow up your Field of the Dead or something that you may have added into it, or one of your tri-lands that you want? Did somebody blow up your Ozolith?
Yep.
Whatever that you want to add into the deck later. And you can also use it on things, your lands that come in, like Evolving Wild and stuff, to go get another land if you really need to.
Could.
So,
but any number of permanent cards with different names from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's pretty good. Living Death is a great card, and that only gets creatures. This card just does all of it. It's just dump your graveyard into play.
Yeah, Living Death was one I really considered for this as well, but Eerie Ultimatum, I think, takes that slot just because it seems super, super cool and powerful. So my next one is I went from the cards that'll help get things into the graveyard to some really good creatures you probably want to one that I think that a lot of people are going to be familiar with, and that is Shieldred Whispering One. Now, this is a very, very sweet card. One of the Praetors, it has Swamp Walk, plus it has a little bit of control in that it makes your opponent sacrifice creatures at the beginning of their upkeep, and also all those creatures that you might have in your graveyard already, it goes and gets them and puts them directly onto the battlefield. So,
very good card. The Praetors are all very good. Shieldred is one of the best.
Yeah, Shieldred's definitely one of my favorite. I really, really enjoy the effect of being able to kind of, hey, I'm going to get what I want, and also make sure if you're playing, only a few creatures that you're going to be getting rid of those. Plus, Swamp Walk, in case any of your opponents have Swamp, just get in there with it.
Yeah. So the next card I chose, we're finally at a common, something that's not, some sort of powerhouse rare or anything, is Grapple with the Past, which I was surprised was not in the deck. Grizzly Salvage is in the deck, which is very, very powerful for the self-mill kind of digging theme. But Grapple with the Past is a colorless and a green instant. You put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, and then you can choose a creature or land card from your graveyard and put it to your hand. Fantastic. Can get you lands in a pinch.
Very straightforward.
Can get you the best creature out of your graveyard instant, so you don't have to worry about doing it on your own turn. Very straightforward card, just exactly what the deck's trying to do.
Yep. And as I was telling John before this filming started, one of my cards that I put in my list was Grizzly Salvage. I was like, how is this not in the deck? And then I re-looked and I was like, oh, of course they already have it in here. It's a really great card. And Grapple the Past, another really great example of a card that you want with that type of thing. So, all right. So my next card is one that I think, again, works pretty well with the theme of the deck, and that is Carador Ghost Chieftain. This one is a lot of people already have like as an Abzan Reanimator style deck as the commander for it. It's 5 white, black, green, legendary creature, Centaur Spirit. It costs 1 less for each creature card in your graveyard. Works well with what we've got going on already. And during each of your turns, you may cast 1 creature card from your graveyard. So if you've already got Cathriel's ability come in, put all those counters everywhere, then you can start churning those creatures back into the battlefield on your turn.
Yeah.
And just getting a big powerhouse like Shieldred, like Chroma, and just putting them right in there. So it uses your graveyard as a second hand as far as creatures are concerned.
Carador is quite a powerful card. It's not what it used to be, but it's an excellent addition to Abzan, like Reanimator or Self-Mill styles. So.
Yeah.
So the next card I chose, former standard powerhouse from way back when, still very good commander card, is Greater Good. 2 colorless, green, green enchantment, sacrifice a creature, exactly what you want to do. Draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power, and then choose and discard 3 cards. Green, black, white, there's not a ton of card draw, that's just like raw power. You have like Sylvan Libraries and things like that. But Greater Good is just one of those cards that can just net you so many cards. It digs, it puts creatures in your graveyard, draws a ton of cards. It's everything that you're trying to do It interacts with your commander incredibly favorably because it doesn't need to actually go to the graveyard. It's just whatever the sacrifice creature's power was. So if Cathrol was a 9/9, you still draw 9 cards and pitch 3. Get a whole new hand. So.
Yep. So this definitely has a good spot in place of something like the Harmonize that's already in the deck, which is one of the only other like green kind of
just raw
cards,
draw.
and just pure draw. So that one works very well in place of something like that. My next one, along the same lines as Carador, but a little bit better, is one of Justin Parnell's favorite cards, Marin of Clan Neltoth. Whenever a creature you control dies, get an experience counter, and at the beginning of your end step, choose target creature card in your graveyard. If that card's converted mana cost is less than or equal to the number of experience counters you have, return it to the battlefield. Otherwise, put it in your hand. So again, same thing. If you've already cast your Cathril, gotten all those counters on everything, and want to start getting those creatures back into play so that you can have just a bigger, better army, Marin really, really helps out with that sort of thing.
Yep, for sure. So my next card, I actually finally chose a land. We talked about upgrading mana base at the beginning of this, and we weren't really just choosing, the obvious Overgrown Tomb, Godless Shrine. We're not looking at that. But as a utility land and a relatively cheap one, I selected Crypt of Agadine. So Crypt of Agadine comes into the battlefield tapped, and you can tap it for a black or pay 2 and add a black mana to your mana pool for every black creature card in your graveyard. Now,
I think this is a really, really good ad.
Yeah. It's not Cabal Coffers, but it also, you can fill up your graveyard a lot quicker than you can play lands. So this card is a very powerful mana boost. I think this is pretty much a shoo-in if you're playing a lot of heavily black creatures in the deck.
For sure. I think this one is a really, really great addition. My next one is one that's came out recently, and a lot of people have kind of looked at it as a commander. I know it's not like the super top tier, but Sir Conrad the Grim works really well with this deck if you're trying to put stuff in the graveyard and also get stuff out of the graveyard.
Yeah.
So it says whenever another creature dies or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent. And then it can also make everybody mill 1 by paying 1 to black. It's a 5/4 for 5. It's an uncommon, so it's not terribly expensive. I think it's only like a quarter or something like that at this point. So really good option. It works with cards like Buried Alive because it's put into a graveyard from anywhere. So you're taking it right out of your library, put it in a graveyard, deals 3 to everybody right away. So and I think just with the amount of recursion you're going to be trying to do, it works really well.
Yeah, imagine having Sir Conrad at and casting Eerie Ultimatum.
Yeah.
For every creature. Just bang, 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 bang.
Each creature in your grave, just, like 7, 8, just bam, right into play. You're just draining everybody, pinging everybody for 7 or 8 right then.
Yeah.
Plus you've got all those extra creatures in the battlefield now, so works out really well.
So for my next card, I had chose a reserve list card that was incredibly expensive and realized that's probably not the best case, the easiest upgrade. So I went to the very next option, which is Fauna Shaman. 2/2 for 2, pay a green, tap, discard a creature card, search your library for a creature card, reveal it, put it to your hand, and then shuffle your library. So this is the creature version of Survival of the Fittest, which was the card I initially had selected. Fauna Shaman's a perfectly reasonable upgrade without spending however much a survival is now. Fantastic card, early drop, search your best creature out of your deck, which one of the next few cards I'm going to be revealing is going to be one of those cards that I would go search for. It's a toolbox card, gets you what you need when you need it. So,
yeah, I think it's a great addition. We are kind of steering a little bit away from some of the cards that are going to have a lot of the keywords on it, as you see, like the ones that we're suggesting. So make sure when you're doing like the upgrades with this that you're keeping in mind the creatures that have all those keywords that you want to keep doing, because something like Fauna Shaman's really going to get that engine going.
Yes, it's going to put those creatures with the keywords in your graveyard, and then go find the other ones. If you don't have the hexproof creature, you can go find it, and then upgrade the hexproof creature to another one. So it's definitely one of those types of cards.
Yeah. So my last one is, again, kind of in the theme that I was talking about earlier of being a reanimator, trying to get a bunch of stuff. And this is like the slightly different version of the Eerie Ultimatum because that gets all permanents from your graveyard, whereas Rise of the Dark Realms actually gets all creature cards from all graveyards, puts them to the battlefield under your control.
Yeah.
So I think this one is very, very sweet because not only does it get all those creatures that you've already been pitching, but hopefully all the creatures that you've been destroying or that your opponents have been wrathing off the board and stuff like that into all their graveyards right into play under your control. So you get some other sweet options there.
Yeah.
So again, just a big swingy finisher. I think with all the creatures you're going to be putting in with a bunch of really cool keywords, this should just work really well in your favor. It's already got a big, big effect, but it should have a lot more presence on the board than even just getting, your Land of War Elves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you got two more.
I do, because I had Eerie Ultimatum that I covered, so I have two more. I'm gonna quickly jump, and the next card I'll cover is Casualties of War. Casualty War is a black-green staple card. I don't know how to put it any other way. I put this card in every single deck that I could cast it in. It's everything I want. I get to blow up a land, a creature, a planeswalker, an artifact, an enchantment. It's just decimate for 2 black. Like,
it's decimate, but it gives you the option to choose one or more.
So you can play nice. You don't have to have every target. Fantastic card. Any deck I ever build that can cast it, it goes in. And so
very sweet.
The last card I have is we're going to call it Volanti, the plant beast form, because if you're playing this card in Commander, you should have the Godzilla version of the card. These alternate art cards are fantastic. I'm not even a Godzilla fan, but I absolutely love these full art Godzilla framed cards. They knocked it out of the park with this. But the card I'm referring to, its actual name is Nethroi, Apex of Death. 2 colors, white, black, green. It's a legendary creature, cat, nightmare, beast, because it has the keyword of mutate. You can mutate this card for 4 colorless, a Selesnya hybrid, black. And then, obviously, how mutate works. When you do that, you can choose over or under. I think all of us know at this point now, even though we're not quite into it with paper, we've done a lot of digital play, most likely. So you can mutate it on a non-human, choose over or under, and this creature has Death Touch and Lifelink, and whenever it mutates, return any number of target creatures with total power 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So if you have these small cards like Stitcher Supplier, Fauna Shaman, the smaller creatures that start your engine, you can get a bunch of those back, or you can just get your giant creature back. You can get your Achroma Angel of Wrath back. You can get basically anything back with this card.
Yeah. So, and you can divide it as you choose because it is total power.
Total power, yes. So if you want to get, a 1/1 for 1 or whatever it is, a 1/1 or 1 power, and then a 9 power creature, you can do that. You can split it any way you want. It's a Protean Hulk style card. So
yeah, for sure. I think that one is really great, and you can definitely pick a couple more mutate creatures to go along with that because it is every time it mutates. Because it is one of the big legendary, big, mythic mutate creatures. So those ones care about every single time you do it.
Yep.
And so if you do it multiple times, you can keep getting all those creatures back. Yep. And if you're sacrificing with them as like altar, then you're going to churn through those really, really quickly.
And you can find the mutate creatures with keywords, the ones like Menace and Trample and stuff like that. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So that is our suggestions for upgrading the Symbiotic Swarm deck for Commander 2020. We hope you enjoyed this, and let us know in the comments what you would actually do to upgrade this. And again, try and avoid some of the stuff like, your lands that are going to help out and like the obvious stuff like Crossing Grip and things like that. Let us know what you think would be really cool so that everybody else can see and kind of figure out how they would want to build this. So, John, did you have anything else to add?
No, I very much enjoy this. So this is something I just do anyways whenever a new Commander product comes out because I'm looking at all of the decks. As you can see you can't see in my background. You can see in your background, you have the Otremi deck back there. I've got the Timeless Wisdom deck back here. I'm already working on that one. So I'm eager to get towards the rest of these.
Yeah, so awesome. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. And make sure to check out our next episode, which is going to be Timeless Wisdom in just a few. Bye, everybody.